Hello and welcome. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't going to make any more TV licensing videos because I've done a few recently. Then I got one of these. And look at that, it's actually addressed to the occupier. Present occupier. Dear Sir, Madam, isn't that a little bit dated nowadays? Your property is now listed as unlicensed in our database. So what was the point of me registering as no license required? It's our duty to ensure that everyone who needs a license has one. So we have started an investigation into your property. Why have they started an investigation into my property? I notified them just over a year ago I don't need a license. What you should do now to stop the investigation, please do one of the following. Then in bold letters after that, the consequences of being incorrectly licensed. How can you be incorrectly licensed? You're either not licensed or you are licensed. Incorrectly licensed implies that you've got a license and it's not the right one. So unless you bought a black and white TV license, which I can't imagine anybody does very much anymore, then why have they put that? Anyway, if we don't hear from you, we will have to schedule a visit to your address. Oh my goodness. Then it says, once you've contacted us, we will cancel the investigation and update our records immediately. Anyway, there we go. This, I'm going to do the right thing with it. All and tenacity of them is absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, let's move on, taking care of business. Okay, so today we're myth-busting two massive concepts that have become talking points in the past on the likes of TikTok, Instagram, all sorts of social media, and even here on YouTube. Yes, we're talking about the TV licensing officer's implied right of access to your property and the window observed evidence. Two fundamental points I think it's always wise to know. Now, from my perspective, I live on the 4th floor, so unless they've got a big ladder, they're not going to be looking in my window to see what I watch on TV. Because to be honest, if anybody comes up to my window with a ladder, I'm going to be a bit worried. So if you've spent any time looking into this online, you've probably seen hundreds of videos telling you to write to TV licensing, sending them a formal letter stating that you revoke their implied right of access to your property. And to be honest, a lot of those videos are deeply misleading. Why, I hear you asking? Okay, well, let's explain. Fundamentally, the way they frame it scares you into thinking TV licensing officers or Capita representatives, which are fundamentally sales reps, have got the right to walk into your property and start quizzing you about your TV licensing habits, or an automatic right to walk into your home, when in reality, they don't. So today we're setting the record straight. I'm going to explain exactly why they have no more right to enter your property than the milkman, the postman, or anybody else, how the law protects your boundaries, and how TV licensing officers actually get their evidence. Let's start with who these people actually are. So when a TV licensing enforcement officer turns up at your door with a badge, a clipboard, a body cam, probably wearing a black outfit, and it's got TV licensing badge on there, and probably blue and silver or something like that, so they look exceptionally official, designed in the same sort of manner as bailiffs, police officers, those type of people, which makes it incredibly easy to mistake them for those type of people, for somebody official, like a council official, or a court bailiff, or somebody with state authority. But their authority absolutely does not permit them to demand you answer any questions, sign any documents, or enter your home, unless of course they've got a warrant, and we'll go into that later. And this is fundamentally because they're not government officials, they're employees. TV licensing is simply a trademark of the BBC, but the collections and door-to-door enforcement is contracted out to private companies like Capita, that also have a lot to do with PIP and other areas of government investigations and government collections. So Capita, or another company similar to Capita, acting under statutory authority given to them by the government and instructions from the BBC, are a collection agent acting on behalf of the BBC to collect the TV licence. The people knocking on your door are employees of a company. They have absolutely no statutory authority to enter your property whatsoever. They cannot cross your threshold unless you invite them in. So do yourself a favour, don't invite them in. So, just where does the obsession with writing to them to withdraw their implied right of access come from? To understand that, we have to have a quick look at English property law. Under the common law, there's an implied general licence given to the public. It's a basic everyday social rule that allows people to walk up your driveway or up your path. It allows the postman to walk up and put a letter through your letterbox, or an Amazon delivery driver to drop off a parcel, or a neighbour to walk up your path and return a football that one of your kids has thrown over the fence by mistake. It's an implied right to walk up your pathway or driveway to communicate with the occupier, the resident of the property. It is absolutely not an implied right of access to enter your home. Your neighbour doesn't have an implied right of access to enter your home, nor does the postman. Fundamentally, it gives people permission to come up your driveway or your pathway and knock on your front door. That's it. It doesn't give TV licensing officers the right to open your side gate and start wandering around your back garden, to open your conservatory door or try the handle to see if it's open, or even to walk in if the door's open, or to go through your side gate and start peering in the windows at the back of your property. If they do that, they're no longer exercising a public right under that license. They're not exercising an implied right that's available to the public. They're violating the law. They're actually trespassing. The moment an enforcement officer starts wandering around, the moment they open the side gate, or if they intrude further into your property than any normal person would if they were visiting your home, unless of course you invite them in, they're committing the tort of trespass in civil law. Legally, it's no different from a stranger wandering around your back garden. You have the absolute right to tell them to leave. Now, of course, there is one major exception to this, and we need to be completely honest about it. As I mentioned earlier, if on the very rare occasion a TV licensing officer has a genuine, reasonable suspicion that a resident is actively evading TV licensing laws, and they actually have credible evidence to back it up, then they can apply to the magistrate's court for a search warrant. And if the magistrate grants that warrant, then yes, they are granted a lawful right of entry to your property, irrelevant of implied consent, and with or without your express consent. And they will most likely bring a police officer with them to execute that warrant. But let's put this into perspective. We are talking literally about a handful of these warrants are issued per year in the whole entire country. Out of millions of unlicensed properties, obviously me being one now as far as they're concerned, the majority, probably, like me, don't actually need one because you don't watch BBC and you don't watch live TV. So the chances of a warrant being issued to actually search your property are exceptionally slim. It's simply not a thing your average person needs to worry about, especially if you genuinely don't need a license. So, if they don't have warrants and they don't have an implied right of access to actually walk into your property, how do people actually get caught? I hear you thinking. This is where it gets interesting. See, I have lots of comments that say they can't look in through your windows, that's a breach of privacy rights. And yeah, to a certain degree, obviously, if you've got somebody that's leering in your windows and they're doing it for the wrong reasons, then it's an element of voyeurism or harassment. But in fairness, if they're just walking past your property and they can see in and they can see your 65-inch TV playing Sky Sports Live, that's not a breach of privacy. They are legally allowed to glance in through your windows, same as anybody else walking past your property or up your driveway or up your path. If the postman walking up your path can see in your living room and he can see your TV on, there's a good chance the TV licensing inspector will as well. So provided they do it in exactly the same manner as any other member of the public would, then it's perfectly legal. If they can see your television broadcasting BBC or a live show from out on the street, which obviously is a public place, that's absolutely allowed. So either of those methods can actually be genuinely gathered as window observed evidence. So looking through your window, combined with doorstep interviews, which is where most people fall down, and they literally own up and incriminate themselves by chatting with the enforcement officer at the door. Yeah, I only watch BBC News once a week. You still need a license if you do that. That is genuinely how the vast majority of prosecutions are actually built. They need some evidence. They're going to need a TV licensing officer to probably swear in court if it gets to that point. They rely on you talking to them, or them seeing your 65-inch TV through your window, playing a live show, or broadcasting a BBC soap opera that they know is being broadcast live. This brings us back to those internet videos telling you to write a letter to TV licensing, revoking their implied right to access your property. In reality, you don't need to do that. You don't need to speak to a TV licensing member of staff. You don't even need to answer the door to a TV licensing member of staff. And you certainly don't need to write to them revoking anything. So unless they turn up with a valid court order, which as we established is highly unlikely, you have zero obligation to open the door, zero obligation to speak to them, and zero obligation to fill out any forms or sign anything. You can literally just close the door and ignore them. Now, if you do choose to write your letter, revoking their access to your property, which obviously revokes their access to your garden, your path, your driveway, anywhere that is actually classed as yours, and if they acknowledge that in writing, which they probably won't, but if they did, if after receiving your acknowledgement from them, an inspector later walks up your pathway and looks in your window, again, you could argue in court, theoretically, that any window-viewed evidence was obtained illegally through the tort of trespass in civil law, and therefore should be admissible as evidence. Unless, of course, they can see through your window from the street, which is a public place. But you have to remember, trespass of this nature is a civil matter, not a criminal matter. and courts do have discretion and guidelines to stick to regarding whether they can admit evidence or not. But in truth, suing somebody for trespass of this nature would likely cost you more money than what it would cost to pay for the TV license, and it certainly wouldn't result in any significant damages or compensation. And I'm pretty sure you wouldn't get legal aid for it, so you'd have to pay for someone to represent you, or you'd have to represent yourself. And don't make the mistake so many people are doing now and relying on AI to build a case, because they can't do it. People think they can, but judges and magistrates are getting wise now. They know if your case has been built by AI. Fundamentally, because AI gets it wrong a lot of the time. So the simplest shield isn't a complex letter or writing to anybody or even putting a sign up. The basic method is just ignoring them. If you answer the door and a TV licensing enforcement officer is there, literally be polite if you speak, ask them to leave, say you don't want to speak to them, and just close the door. So to summarise everything we've discussed today, first, TV licensing officers have absolutely no power or special implied legal rights to enter your property any more than your postman or delivery driver does. They're private contractors, not enforcement agents, unless of course they have a warrant, but again, highly unlikely. Secondly, the implied right of access is the same for everybody. It doesn't give them rights to open your side gate, walk in your conservatory if the door's open, or start quizzing your children or anything else. And thirdly, the main one, most people get caught out by the doorstep interview, a casual chat in your front garden, if a TV licensing official comes up to your property and starts talking to you before they've even entered your property, over the hedge, over the fence. Hi, nice day, blah, blah. Oh yeah, you're watching the TV? Yeah, okay. We don't have entrapment like that in this country. It's not like America. So yeah, just don't say anything. And remember, anything they can see from a public place or somewhere where they're allowed to go, the same as delivery drivers, i.e. your pathway or your driveway, if they can see in your window and they can see your TV, they can use that as evidence if they want to. There is no special privacy law that protects the public from glancing in a window as they walk past the property. If they stop, come into your garden, come right up to your window, put their hands up like that and start staring in, that's a different kettle of fish. But again, the right to privacy, it's going to be a difficult one for you to argue with them. So let's open this up in the comments. What do you think about window evidence? Do you think they should be allowed to use it? Do you think it's fair game if it's visible from your pathway? Or do you think the moment an enforcement officer starts peering in through your window, it is a privacy issue and they shouldn't be allowed to admit it as evidence? Or drop any of your experiences with TV licensing in the comments below. I'd love to read them. I hope this video has helped clear up some myths for you. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and also motoring law, anything else that affects us on a daily basis. In the meantime, stay safe, stay legal, but more importantly, stay informed. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.